Join me in diving into this story, but before we begin, I have a small request. If you find yourself captivated by the shadows this story casts, if every word makes you hold your breath, and if you want to explore more chilling tales in the future, please subscribe now. Your support is my greatest motivation to continue telling stories like these. Now then, let's step together into a world where fear reigns and where a killer redefined the very concept of terror in America. Havenwood, Oregon, had always prided itself on its tranquility. Nestled between the sprawling emerald embrace of the Pacific Northwest forests and the restless, gray expanse of the Pacific Ocean, it was a town where the loudest sound on a Friday night was often the distant hoot of an owl or the gentle murmur of the Deschutes River. Its population, a modest 50,000, consisted largely of families who had lived there for generations, supplemented by a steady trickle of urban refugees seeking a slower pace of life, drawn by the promise of crisp air, lush scenery, and a comforting sense of community. The kind of place where unlocked doors were still common, and children rode their bikes unsupervised until the streetlights flickered on. It was, in essence, a haven, or so it seemed. The first tremor in this placid existence registered not as a shockwave, but as a subtle, almost imperceptible ripple. Sarah Jenkins, a 26-year-old librarian known for her quiet demeanor and her vibrant collection of handcrafted pottery, failed to show up for her shift on a Tuesday morning. Her absence initially sparked only mild concern. Sarah was meticulous, almost ritualistic, in her punctuality. Mrs. Gable, the head librarian, a woman whose stern exterior hid a surprising warmth for her staff, called Sarah's apartment, then her cell phone. No answer. She tried again an hour later, a faint prickle of unease beginning to form beneath her professional composure. Still nothing. By midday, a full-blown worry had taken root. Sarah never missed work without calling. Never. It was Sarah's best friend, Emily Carter, who finally called the Havenwood Police Department that evening, her voice laced with a tremor that belied her usual boisterous nature. Emily had a spare key to Sarah's apartment, a relic of their college days, and when she entered, a cold dread had washed over her. The apartment was pristine, almost unnervingly so. A half-finished cup of herbal tea sat on the coffee table, a bookmark resting neatly in a novel open face down on the cushion beside it. Sarah's car was in its usual spot in the small parking lot behind the building. Her purse, containing her wallet and keys, was on the kitchen counter. Her phone, however, was gone. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. It was as if Sarah had simply dissolved. Detective Miles Corbin was the first officer on the scene, his worn trench coat a familiar silhouette against the dim porch light. Corbin was a man carved from the rugged landscape he protected, solid, reliable, with eyes that held the weary wisdom of too many years spent peering into the darker corners of humanity. At 48, he carried the weight of Havenwood's peace on his broad shoulders, a burden that had etched lines around his mouth and sprinkled his dark hair with premature silver. He surveyed the apartment with a practiced eye, his gaze lingering on the mundane details that now screamed absence. The half-empty teacup, the perfectly aligned books on the shelf, the untouched bed. It was too neat, too quiet. The silence in Sarah Jenkins' apartment was deafening, a vacuum where a life should have been. No signs of struggle, Emily says. His partner, Detective Lena Hansen, noted, her voice hushed. Hansen was sharp, methodical, and relatively new to Havenwood, having transferred from Portland a year prior. She offered a fresh perspective, untainted by the town's ingrained sense of security. No forced entry. Cars here. Wallet, keys, everything present and accounted for, except her phone and, well, Sarah. Corbin ran a gloved hand over the cool surface of the kitchen counter. Means she left voluntarily, or was taken by someone she knew, or someone who made her believe she was leaving voluntarily. He paused, his brow furrowed in thought. Or someone who was very, very good at what they do. The last possibility, unspoken but palpable, hung heavy in the air. Kidnappings were rare in Havenwood. Stranger abductions virtually unheard of. This felt different. Felt surgical. The initial investigation was a blur of activity, yet yielded frustratingly little. Every neighbor within a 2-block radius was questioned, their accounts offering little more than shrugs and expressions of disbelief. No one saw anything suspicious. No strange cars, no unusual noises. Sarah was a creature of habit. Her routine was as predictable as the changing seasons. She walked to work, frequented a small local cafe on her lunch break, and spent her evenings reading or working on her pottery. She had no known enemies, no volatile relationships, no secret life that anyone could uncover. She was, by all accounts, an ordinary, good-hearted woman. Days turned into a week. The missing persons report escalated from local news to regional headlines. Sarah's face, a gentle smile frozen in time, stared out from news channels and social media feeds. The town's initial concern morphed into a creeping anxiety. People began locking their doors, looking twice over their shoulders. Parents walked their children to school, their grip on tiny hands tighter than usual. The sense of invulnerability that had been Havenwood's defining characteristic began to fray at the edges. Corbin felt the pressure mount, a physical ache in his chest. Every dead end, every unreturned phone call, every inconclusive forensic report chipped away at his resolve. They had no witnesses, no physical evidence beyond a few latent fingerprints that belonged to Sarah or Emily, and a faint, almost imperceptible scent in the air of Sarah's apartment, something floral, but indistinct, that the K9 units couldn't track. It was nothing, a ghost of a lead. Then came the second disappearance. Michael Chun, a 34-year-old high school history teacher, vanished precisely 10 days after Sarah Jenkins. Like Sarah, Michael was a pillar of the community, respected and well-liked. He lived alone in a small house on the other side of town, his routine equally unremarkable. Teaching, grading papers, coaching the debate team, and occasionally volunteering at the local animal shelter. His disappearance mirrored Sarah's with unsettling precision. His car was in the driveway. His keys and wallet were on his bedside table. His phone was gone. The house was orderly, a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the kitchen counter, a book open on his nightstand. No signs of forced entry, no struggle. Again, a quiet, inexplicable vanishing act. The similarities were too stark to ignore. Two people, seemingly unconnected, gone without a trace, leaving behind only the eerie absence of their lives. Panic, raw and visceral, began to seize Havenwood. The local news channels, once reporting quaint stories of local festivals and bake-offs, were now consumed by the unfolding horror. The national media, sensing a story of profound unease, descended upon the town like vultures. Reporters flocked to Havenwood, their cameras and microphones thrust into the faces of terrified residents, amplifying the fear, turning every whisper into a shout. "It's a serial abductor," a nervous resident declared on camera, her voice trembling. "They're just taking people. Who's next?" Corbin called a press conference, his face grim, his voice a low rumble that barely masked his frustration. "We are investigating every possible angle," he stated, his eyes scanning the sea of aggressive faces. "We have dedicated all available resources to these cases. We are working closely with the state police and the FBI." The words felt hollow even to him. They had nothing concrete. No motive, no suspect, no lead. Just two gaping holes where vibrant lives used to be. Behind the scenes, the investigative team was a whirlwind of activity and despair. Hansen, usually unflappable, looked visibly strained. Two victims, Miles. Different demographics, different parts of town. What's the connection? What are we missing? She pressed, pacing their cramped office in the police station. Whiteboards were covered in scribbled notes, timelines, victim profiles, all leading to the same frustrating blank. "There has to be a connection, Lena," Corbin replied, rubbing his temples. "It's never random. Not truly random. There's a pattern, a trigger, something we're not seeing." He stared at the two photos pinned side by side on the corkboard. Sarah Jenkins, with her gentle smile, and Michael Chun, with his intelligent, thoughtful gaze. Both kind, quiet, respected individuals. both seemingly without enemies. They brought in a profiler from the FBI, Agent Eleanor Vance. Vance was sharp, analytical, with an intimidating intellect that seemed to cut through the noise. She was younger than Corbin, but her eyes held a similar, though perhaps less jaded, weariness. She spent days sifting through every detail, interviewing family members, poring over the victims' lives. The lack of struggle, the pristine scenes, the absence of any physical evidence speaks to a highly organized offender. Vance explained during a briefing, her voice calm and measured, a stark contrast to the growing hysteria in the room. They're either extremely careful, or they're using a method that neutralizes their victims quickly and silently. The removal of the cell phone is also significant. It prevents tracking, yes, but it also severs a critical link to their lives. A way to control the narrative. But why Havenwood? Asked a younger officer, his face pale. Why here? Vance shrugged slightly. Could be opportunistic. Could be someone who knows the area well. Or someone passing through. The lack of a body is the most troubling aspect. It removes the closure for the families and intensifies the fear within the community. It's a power play. They're not just taking lives. They're taking certainty, peace of mind. Corbin listened, his mind racing. He kept coming back to the silence. The chilling, absolute silence that followed each disappearance. It wasn't the silence of death, which often left its own messy clues. It was the silence of something being meticulously erased. He drove home late that night, the rain beginning to fall, casting a sheen on the winding roads. Havenwood, usually bustling even on a weekday evening, was now deserted. Houses were dark, curtains drawn. The vibrant community had retreated behind locked doors and drawn blinds. A collective breath held tight. He thought of his own daughter, 22, away at college, but the thought still sent a shiver down his spine. No one was safe. He found himself standing in his living room, staring out at the rain-streaked window, the streetlights reflecting distortedly on the wet pavement. He felt a profound sense of failure, a crushing weight of responsibility. Havenwood had trusted him to keep it safe. And now the town was paralyzed by a fear he couldn't name, couldn't fight, couldn't even see. A week later, the terror escalated further. The third victim was David Miller, a 70-year-old retired architect, a widower who lived alone in a charming Victorian house on the outskirts of town. David was known for his community work, his meticulously tended rose garden, and his daily ritual of walking his golden retriever, Rusty, through the local park. His disappearance followed the same chilling pattern. Rusty was found whimpering at the front door, David's keys on the hook, his wallet on the counter, his phone missing. The house was undisturbed. But this time there was something new. A detail, subtle and almost missed, that finally gave Corbin a sliver of hope, a thread to pull on in this labyrinth of darkness. Inside David Miller's study, on his antique mahogany desk, a single, perfectly preserved monarch butterfly wing was found. It was delicate, iridescent, and entirely out of place amidst David's organized papers and architectural drawings. It wasn't a natural occurrence. Someone had placed it there. Deliberately, Corbin stared at the fragile wing, a tiny masterpiece of nature, now a sinister calling card. He's not just taking them, Corbin murmured, his voice low, a new grim realization dawning. He's leaving something behind, a signature. He's archiving them. The thought sent a cold dread through him, far deeper than any fear of violence. This wasn't just a killer. It was an artist of disappearance, a collector of lives, leaving behind fragments, like a twisted archivist cataloging his acquisitions. Agent Vance examined the wing under a magnifying glass, her expression unreadable. Monarch butterflies migrate thousands of miles. They symbolize transformation, endurance, the soul's journey. She paused, then looked up at Corbin, her eyes glinting with a grim understanding. Or perhaps simply a collection. Something beautiful, something rare, something preserved. The butterfly wing was sent to the state lab, but the initial reports were not promising. No discernible fingerprints, no DNA that wasn't David Miller's. No unique identifiers on the wing itself. It was a perfect, silent taunt. The media seized on the butterfly wing, transforming the anonymous abductor into the archivist, a moniker that instantly resonated with the public's burgeoning dread. The image of a meticulous, almost scholarly predator, carefully selecting and cataloging his victims, was far more terrifying than a random killer. It implied a chilling intelligence, a deliberate purpose behind the chaos. Havenwood was no longer a haven. It was a town under siege, not by an invading army, but by an unseen enemy, an insidious fear that crept into every home, every conversation, every shadowed corner. Schools reported dwindling attendance, businesses struggled as people stayed home, and the once vibrant community spirit withered under the oppressive weight of terror. Vigilante groups began to form, self-appointed guardians patrolling the streets, their good intentions often bordering on paranoia, leading to false alarms and heightened tensions. Corbin felt the frustration building into a burning rage. He had spent his life protecting this town, battling the mundane crimes, the domestic disputes, the occasional robbery. He understood the ugliness of human nature. But this was something entirely different. This was a violation of the very fabric of peace, a deliberate unraveling of society's trust. The archivist wasn't just taking lives. He was taking Havenwood itself, piece by silent piece. He stood in the Situation Room, the large map of Havenwood spread out on the table, red pins marking the locations of Sarah Jenkins, Michael Chun, and David Miller. 3 pins, forming an irregular triangle across the town. No geographical pattern. No obvious connection. "All right, people," Corbin barked, his voice cutting through the weary silence of the room. "Let's re-examine everything. Every single detail. What did Sarah eat for breakfast? What book was Michael reading? What was David's routine before he walked Rusty that morning? Every mundane detail. Because somewhere in the mundane, in the seemingly irrelevant, is our archivist. He's hiding in plain sight, and we're going to find him." His gaze swept across the faces of his team, tired, strained, but still determined. The weight of Havenwood rested on their shoulders. They had to break the silence. They had to find the archivist, before Havenwood itself became just another archived memory. The next few days were a grind. Officers went back to re-interview neighbors, this time armed with the knowledge of the butterfly wing. They scoured the victims' digital footprints, their social media, their emails, hoping for a flicker of an anomaly. They checked local libraries, antique shops, nature preserves, any place where someone might find or study monarch butterflies. Nothing. The wing remained an isolated, enigmatic clue. Corbin found himself increasingly isolated, even amongst his own team. The mounting pressure from the mayor's office, from the media, from the terrified populace, was relentless. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of questions without answers, a silent scream building in his throat. He'd seen plenty of horror in his career, but this cold, calculated disappearance, devoid of the usual messy violence, was far more insidious. It tapped into a primal fear, the fear of simply ceasing to be, of being erased. One evening, after another fruitless day, Corbin was at his desk, staring at the corkboard. Sarah, Michael, David. 3 lives, extinguished without a trace. He traced the outlines of their faces with a finger. He tried to imagine their final moments. Did they know? Was there fear or just confusion? The lack of answers was maddening. Suddenly, a thought, barely a whisper, snagged in his mind. The phone. All 3 phones were missing. Not just Sarah's, but Michael's and David's too. It was more than just preventing tracking. It was a trophy, a personal item containing a piece of their lives. Photos, messages, contacts, a digital archive. He called Agent Vance, the late hour be damned. "Eleanor," he said, his voice raspy with fatigue and a jolt of new energy. "The phones. It's not just about stopping us from tracking them. It's about what's on them. Their lives. Their memories. He's taking their digital existence, too." A beat of silence on the other end. Then Vance's voice, sharper now, more alert. "You're right, Miles. It's a comprehensive erasure, a complete collection. He's taking everything. Physical presence, digital footprint. He's not just killing them. He's absorbing them. The realization hit Corbin with the force of a physical blow. The archivist wasn't just collecting. He was consuming. He was meticulously assembling a library of stolen lives, each victim a unique volume in his horrifying collection. And the Monarch Wing, beautiful and fragile, was merely a symbolic bookmark, a quiet declaration of ownership. The air in Havenwood grew heavier with each passing day, thick with unspoken anxieties. Children's playgrounds stood empty, their swings swaying gently in the wind, a mournful echo of laughter now stifled. The local diner, usually a hub of gossip and camaraderie, now served its coffee in near silence, patrons whispering in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously towards the windows. The very fabric of community was unraveling, thread by painstaking thread. Corbin walked the deserted streets at night, the only sound his heavy footsteps and the melancholic drip of rain from the eaves. He felt the weight of the town's fear pressing down on him, a palpable entity. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that Havenwood would never be the same. The innocence was gone, replaced by a lingering shadow, a permanent scar on its soul. The archivist had not just taken 3 lives. He had stolen the heart of a town, leaving behind only the cold, hard silence of its absence. As the weeks bled into a month, the disappearances continued, each one meticulously executed, each leaving behind the chilling signature of a single, perfectly preserved butterfly wing. A young mother, Maria Rodriguez, vanished from her home while her toddler slept soundly in the next room. A respected local historian, Dr. Arthur Finch, disappeared from his study, leaving behind a half-written manuscript and a collection of rare first editions. 5 lives now, 5 meticulously erased existences, each marked by the delicate, macabre beauty of a monarch wing. The pattern, once nebulous, was now terrifyingly clear. The archivist was not targeting a specific demographic. His victims spanned age, gender, profession, and social standing. Sarah, the quiet librarian. Michael, the engaging teacher. David, the retired architect. Maria, the young mother. Arthur, the erudite historian. The only common thread was their apparent ordinariness, their integration into the fabric of Havenwood. They were not outcasts or highflyers. They were the essential quiet threads that held the community together, and the archivist was systematically snipping them away. The town plunged into a collective hysteria. People started moving away, abandoning their homes, unable to bear the constant, oppressive fear. Those who remained organized vigils, prayer meetings, and even armed patrols. But nothing seemed to deter the phantom predator. The Havenwood Police Department was overwhelmed, its resources stretched to breaking point, its officers exhausted and demoralized. Corbin felt the frustration curdling into despair. He stood in the war room, now a permanent fixture of his life, surrounded by maps, timelines, and the haunting photographs of the missing. Each face stared back at him, an accusation, a silent plea. He rubbed his temples, the headache a constant companion. 5 victims, he muttered to Vance, who stood beside him, her face equally drawn. 5 lives meticulously erased. And we have nothing. Not a single tangible lead. Vance nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the map. The lack of struggle, Miles, the absolute absence of evidence. It's unprecedented. This isn't brute force. This is manipulation, precision, psychological warfare. She paused, her voice dropping. Or something far more disturbing. Something that makes them want to go. Something that silences them before they can even scream. The thought was chilling. Was the archivist hypnotizing his victims? Drugging them? Or was there a deeper, more sinister connection that they were still missing? Something that rendered them compliant? Corbin considered her words. Compliance implies a relationship or a powerful psychological hold. But there's no indication any of them knew a common individual, or were involved in anything secretive. Exactly, Vance agreed, which points to a master manipulator, or someone who can create a sense of trust very, very quickly. Or perhaps they don't even see the person who takes them. Maybe it's an ambush, but one so swift and seamless that it leaves no trace. The image of a silent, unseen predator, effortlessly plucking people from their homes, leaving behind only a delicate butterfly wing and an echoing void, filled Corbin with a profound sense of dread. He looked at the map again, at the 5 red pins scattered across the tranquil town. Havenwood. The name felt like a cruel joke now. There was no haven here, only the chilling shadow of the archivist, meticulously, silently, writing his own terrifying narrative. The chapter of fear had only just begun. The terror in Havenwood had evolved beyond mere panic. It had settled into a pervasive, chronic dread that seeped into the very foundations of daily life. The cheerful hum of community had been replaced by a low, anxious murmur, a constant vigilance that left residents perpetually on edge. Children, once free to roam, now played only within the confines of their yards, under the watchful eyes of their parents, their laughter muted, their games tinged with an unspoken caution. Businesses, particularly those that relied on late-night patronage, struggled to stay afloat as the streets emptied after sundown, leaving only the rain-slicked pavements reflecting the lonely glow of streetlights. The once vibrant coffee shops and bakeries now served their loyal, though fewer, customers in near silence, the usual lively chatter replaced by hushed conversations about the latest disappearance, about rumors of vigilantism, about the chilling enigma of the archivist. Corbin, now perpetually operating on a few hours of sleep and an endless supply of lukewarm coffee, felt the town's collective fear as a physical weight on his shoulders. His once clean desk was buried under case files, forensic reports, and witness statements, each document a testament to their frustrating lack of progress. The war room, once a temporary setup, had become the nerve center of the Havenwood Police Department, its whiteboards crammed with interconnected details, timelines, victim profiles, and speculative theories, a chaotic tapestry of desperation and fragmented hope. Agent Eleanor Vance, whose initial stint in Havenwood was meant to be brief, had become a permanent fixture, her analytical mind a crucial counterpoint to Corbin's more experience-driven intuition. She moved through the chaotic scene with an almost unsettling calm, her focus unwavering. "We've profiled for everything," she reported during one of their increasingly frequent midnight briefings. "Organized, disorganized, lust killer, power killer, visionary. Nothing fits perfectly. The lack of interaction with the bodies, the meticulous cleanup, the absence of overt violence. It's as if the act itself is secondary to the acquisition." "Acquisition?" Corbin repeated, the word chilling him anew. "He's collecting them like rare books or specimens, each one a unique addition to his personal archive." He paced the room, his gaze sweeping over the map of Havenwood, dotted now with 5 red pins, each representing a life stolen. But what's the connection? Sarah, Michael, David, Maria, Arthur. A librarian, a teacher, a retired architect, a young mother, a historian. What brings them together in his twisted taxonomy? They had spent weeks dissecting every facet of the victims' lives. Their hobbies, their social circles, their online activity, their health records, their financial histories. Nothing. No shared clubs, no common employer, no online forum they all frequented. They didn't even live in particularly close proximity, ruling out a purely geographical targeting. Hansen, looking pale and exhausted, entered the room, carrying a fresh stack of reports. Lab came back on the butterfly wings. All monarchs, as expected. No discernible DNA on any of them, besides trace elements that match the victims or their immediate household. No pollen, no spores, nothing to indicate where they were collected. They're all perfectly preserved, almost taxidermied. Taxidermied? Corbin echoed, the word conjuring a grotesque image of a collector's cabinet. So he's not just finding them, he's preparing them. This points to a deeper, more meticulous ritual. Vance interjected. The method of preservation suggests a certain level of skill, perhaps even an interest in entomology, or simply a desire for permanence. He wants these trophies to last. We've canvassed every entomology club, Every butterfly enthusiast group within 100-mile radius. Hanson sighed, running a hand through her hair. No one stands out. No one has gone missing. No one has reported anything unusual. What about the phones? Corbin pressed. Any luck tracing those? Negative, Vance replied, shaking her head. They were all turned off within minutes of the disappearances. No pings. If he's using them as trophies, they're probably stored somewhere inaccessible or dismantled. The phone aspect gnawed at Corbin. It wasn't just about the data, it was about the personal connection. A phone was an extension of a person, a digital mirror of their soul. To take it was to take a piece of their very identity. One late evening, while the rest of the team was out chasing yet another phantom lead, Corbin sat alone in the war room, staring at the pictures of the victims. He pulled out a large, detailed map of Havenwood, overlaying it on the existing one. He didn't just look at the pins. He looked at the spaces between them. He tried to think like the archivist. If it wasn't about the victims themselves, or their location, what else could it be? His eyes drifted to the local community college, Havenwood College, a small but respected institution that offered a range of programs. Sarah Jenkins occasionally lectured on local history at the college. Michael Chun taught history at the local high school, but had a master's degree from Havenwood College. David Miller had been a prominent alumnus, having designed several buildings on campus. Maria Rodriguez was taking night classes in graphic design there. And Dr. Arthur Finch had been a tenured professor of history, a local legend. A cold jolt ran through Corbin. The college, he whispered to the empty room. It's the college. He immediately called Vance, his voice urgent, cutting through her usual composed demeanor. Eleanor, I think I've got it. The common thread. Havenwood College. Every single one of them had a significant connection to it. Vance was at the police station within 20 minutes, her expression a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Corbin laid out his theory, painstakingly connecting each victim to the institution. Sarah, a former student who occasionally guest lectured. Michael, an alumnus and local teacher. David, a prominent alumnus and architect for campus buildings. Maria, a current student. Arthur, a tenured professor. It's circumstantial, Miles, Vance conceded, her brow furrowed. But it's the strongest connection we've found so far. It shifts the entire focus of the investigation. It narrows the field, Corbin agreed, feeling a surge of energy he hadn't felt in weeks. He's not just taking random people. He's taking people who represent something about the college. Its past, its present, its future, its essence. The investigation pivoted dramatically. The focus shifted from the broader community to the microcosmic world of Havenwood College. Every faculty member, every student, every administrative staff, every alumnus who had a significant connection to the institution became a person of interest. The college community, already reeling from the general fear, was now thrown into turmoil. The suspicion cast a pall over the usually bustling campus. Students looked at their professors with newfound apprehension. Professors eyed their colleagues with guarded suspicion. The sense of trust, already eroded in Havenwood, completely crumbled within the college walls. Corbin and Vance, along with a team of state police detectives, began a painstaking deep dive into the college's records, a vast repository of information spanning decades. They reviewed student lists, faculty directories, alumni associations, even campus security footage going back months. They interviewed hundreds of people, from the college president to the janitorial staff. The pressure intensified exponentially. The media, scenting a new angle, swarmed the college campus, turning every interview into a potential headline, every student protest into a national story. The narrative shifted. Havenwood was not just a town under siege. It was an academic institution, a bastion of knowledge, now infiltrated by a malevolent force. Weeks of relentless work followed, a grueling marathon of data analysis and interrogations. They discovered a few minor anomalies. A disgruntled former groundskeeper, a student who had dropped out under mysterious circumstances, a professor with a history of volatile behavior. Each lead was pursued with grim determination, only to lead to another dead end. The archivist, it seemed, was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machine. Then, a new disappearance shattered the fragile hope they had begun to build. Professor Evelyn Hayes, a 72-year-old brilliant, eccentric astrophysicist at Havenwood College, vanished from her home. Like the others, her house was undisturbed, her car in the driveway, her wallet and keys on her nightstand. Her phone was gone, and on her antique telescope stand, amidst charts of constellations and cosmic dust, lay a single iridescent monarch butterfly wing. The collective groan from the investigation team was almost audible. 6 victims, all linked to Havenwood College. All gone, without a struggle, leaving only the chilling, beautiful signature. The archivist was not deterred by their intensified efforts. He was perhaps even emboldened by them. He was toying with them, demonstrating his untouchable mastery. 6 victims, Miles, Vance stated, her voice tight with frustration. And still nothing. No DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses, no direct trace. He's a phantom. Corbin stared at Professor Hayes's picture. A woman who had dedicated her life to understanding the vast, unknowable universe, now herself a mystery. He clenched his jaw. He's not a phantom, Eleanor. He's a person. A meticulous, psychopathic person who thinks he's smarter than us. And he's probably laughing. He walked over to the whiteboard where they had compiled a new list of connections to the college, trying to find a commonality beyond just affiliation. He had categorized them by their roles. Sarah, student/lecturer, Michael, alumnus/teacher, David, alumnus/architect, Maria, student, Arthur, professor/historian, Evelyn, professor/scientist. Suddenly, something clicked, a faint, almost subliminal pattern forming in his mind. He looked at the list of professions and connections. Think about it, Corbin said, his voice low, almost a whisper, as if afraid to break the fragile thought. What do these people represent, beyond just being connected to the college? Sarah, a librarian, a custodian of stories and knowledge. Michael, a history teacher imparting the past. David, an architect building the future of the campus. Maria, a student, the promise of new generations. Arthur, a historian, preserving memory. Evelyn, an astrophysicist, reaching for the unknown, charting cosmic paths. Vance's eyes widened slowly as she followed his reasoning. He's not just collecting individuals, Miles. He's collecting concepts. Each victim represents a different facet of knowledge, memory, or aspiration related to the institution itself. He's building an intellectual archive. The revelation was chilling in its profundity. This was not a random act, nor merely a collection of individuals. This was a philosophical statement, a perverse intellectual game. The archivist was constructing a narrative, a macabre library of stolen human potential, each life a meticulously selected volume. He's archiving the very spirit of Havenwood College, Corbin concluded, his voice grim. He's taking the people who represent its past, its present, its future, its knowledge, its dreams. The implications were terrifying. If this theory was correct, the archivist wasn't just killing for power or control. He was killing for a twisted form of intellectual curation, for a grotesque form of immortality where he alone possessed the essence of these lives. And if he was collecting concepts, then he would not stop until his archive was complete. They immediately reprofiled the killer, this time focusing on someone with a deep, perhaps obsessive, connection to the college, someone with an intellectual bent, possibly a history of narcissism or delusions of grandeur, a profound desire for control over information and knowledge. They looked for individuals who might have felt overlooked, unappreciated, or wronged by the institution, perhaps someone seeking to reassert their own twisted vision of its legacy. The investigation now delved into the psychological fabric of the college, searching for anyone who fit this increasingly specific and disturbing profile. They looked into every disgruntled former employee, every student with a history of academic obsession, every professor with a reputation for intellectual arrogance or a hidden pathology. Amidst this, the college administration, under immense pressure, reluctantly agreed to a temporary closure, effective immediately. The campus, usually a bustling hub of intellectual activity, fell silent, its buildings standing like empty monuments to a stolen future. The decision, while necessary, amplified the sense of loss and despair in Havenwood. The archivist had not just taken lives. He had, for a time, silenced an entire institution. Corbin found himself drawn to the college library, a grand, imposing building that had been David Miller's architectural masterpiece. He walked through its silent, echoing halls, past shelves overflowing with books, each volume a testament to centuries of human knowledge. The irony was bitter. Here, in a place dedicated to the preservation of information, a killer was actively erasing it, taking its very human essence. He paused at a display case showcasing rare books and manuscripts. Among them was a first edition of the Havenwood Chronicles, a detailed history of the town and its college, written by Dr. Arthur Finch. Arthur, now one of the archivist's victims, had dedicated his life to preserving history. And now he was history, a silent entry in a monstrous ledger. A thought struck Corbin, a chilling whisper in the cavernous silence of the library. What if the archivist wasn't just collecting people who represented knowledge, but also collecting their knowledge, their insights, their memories, their understanding of the world? What if the stolen phones were not just trophies, but repositories of this very personal, unique knowledge? What if he was not just archiving, but assimilating? The idea was horrifying. It suggested a level of psychological depravity and intellectual arrogance that went beyond simple murder. It painted a picture of a killer who believed he was building a superior consciousness, integrating the stolen essence of others into his own distorted being. He called Vance again, his voice urgent. "Eleanor, we need to re-examine the victim's specific intellectual contributions, their research, their unique insights. What if he's not just collecting them, but collecting from them, harvesting their minds, their individual contributions to knowledge?" Vance was quiet for a moment. "Miles, that's a disturbing thought. It pushes the boundaries of conventional profiling. It suggests a killer with a profound, almost philosophical delusion. Someone who believes they are perfecting themselves through the absorption of others' intellect. Perfecting himself at Havenwood's expense," Corbin agreed grimly. "We need to find out who had access to these people, who held a grudge against the college, who possessed the intellectual capacity and the twisted ambition to create such a monstrous archive." The search intensified, focusing now on those with a deep, potentially unhealthy, intellectual attachment to Havenwood College, individuals who might see themselves as its true guardian or, conversely, its avenging angel. They looked for former students who excelled academically but failed in the outside world, for academics who were passed over for tenure, for anyone with a profound, unfulfilled ambition tied to the institution. The investigation felt like a race against time, not just to find the archivist, but to prevent the complete spiritual dismantling of Havenwood College, and by extension, the town itself. The silence that now enveloped the campus was deafening, a monument to the terror that had taken root. The whispers of the archive, a chilling echo of stolen knowledge and erased lives, now permeated the very air of Havenwood, a constant reminder of the unseen predator that lurked within its shadows, meticulously crafting his masterpiece of dread. The town held its breath, waiting for the next volume to be added to the archivist's macabre collection. The relentless pursuit of the archivist had transformed Detective Miles Corbin. The fatigue etched deep lines onto his face, and his once steady hands often trembled with an adrenaline-fueled tremor. Havenwood, his home, was unrecognizable, its soul scarred by an indelible darkness. The college remained eerily silent, its halls echoing with the ghost of knowledge, its campus a mournful testament to the lives extinguished. The 6 red pins on the war room map now represented not just missing persons, but stolen intellectual fragments, a perverse collection of Havenwood's very essence. Agent Eleanor Vance, equally worn but still razor-sharp, was now working almost seamlessly with Corbin, their initial professional distance having dissolved into a grim camaraderie. The intellectual archive theory had become their guiding light, providing a framework for the killer's motives, no matter how disturbing. "He's curating, not just collecting," Vance reiterated during a late-night session, her finger tracing a line between Professor Evelyn Hayes's photo. Corbin slammed his fist softly on the table, the frustration a burning knot in his stomach. But who in Havenwood College has this level of megalomania, this warped vision of knowledge? Who would believe themselves entitled to steal others' minds? Their search had narrowed significantly, focusing on individuals with a deep, often obsessive, connection to Havenwood College and a history of intellectual ambition or grievance. They had painstakingly delved into academic rivalries, rejected grant proposals, and unfulfilled career aspirations. One name, in particular, kept resurfacing with a quiet, persistent insistence: Dr. Alastair Thorne. Dr. Thorne was a former linguistics professor at Havenwood College, a brilliant but notoriously arrogant scholar. He had published several groundbreaking papers in the early 2000s, gaining national recognition, but his career had subsequently stalled. He was denied tenure twice, overlooked for the prestigious Dean of Humanities position, and eventually took an early retirement under circumstances whispered to be less than amicable. He was known for his vast, almost encyclopedic, knowledge of various subjects, and an insatiable intellectual curiosity, coupled with a profound sense of superiority. He lived alone in a secluded, sprawling house on the edge of the forest, a property so vast and overgrown that it almost disappeared into the natural landscape. Thorne fits the profile perfectly, Vance summarized, ticking off points on a notepad. Intellectual, arrogant, a perceived grievance against the college, a belief in his own genius that was unacknowledged. He has the motive for resentment and the intellectual capacity for such a complex, thematic killing spree. Plus, linguistics, the study of language, how we communicate, how we categorize and understand the world. It's all about structure and meaning, a very archivist pursuit. Corbin nodded slowly. And the reclusiveness, the isolation. It would give him the time and the privacy to plan, to research, to prepare. They had initiated surveillance on Thorne's residence a week ago, a discreet operation manned by a small, dedicated team. For days, Thorne's life appeared mundane. Trips to the grocery store, walks in the vast, overgrown gardens, deliveries of books and scientific journals. He was a creature of habit, moving through his solitary existence with a quiet, almost invisible efficiency. Then, at 3:17 a.m. on a Friday, the surveillance team reported a faint, flickering light from a secluded outbuilding deep within Thorne's sprawling property, a structure previously dismissed as an old toolshed. The light was intermittent, too focused and precise to be a mere lantern. Pulsed, almost rhythmically. "That's our lead," Corbin declared, a grim determination setting his jaw. "That's where he's keeping them. Or where he's preparing his next volume." A carefully orchestrated raid was planned for dawn. Corbin, Vance, and a specialized tactical unit approached Thorne's property under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness, moving through the dense forest with silent precision. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine, and a nervous tension that vibrated through every member of the team. As they approached the outbuilding, a faint, almost imperceptible hum could be heard. The air around the structure felt strangely still, almost sterile. They breached the door with a swift, explosive force, flooding the interior with tactical lights. What they found inside defied explanation, a scene of macabre beauty and unspeakable horror. The outbuilding was not a shed, but a meticulously constructed laboratory and exhibition space. The walls were lined with custom-made display cases, each one a perfectly climate-controlled environment. In the center of the first case, laid out on a plush velvet cushion, was a collection of personal items. Sarah Jenkins's favorite ceramic tea mug, Michael Chen's worn copy of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, David Miller's intricately carved wooden pipe, Maria Rodriguez's sketchpad filled with vibrant designs, Dr. Arthur Finch's antique fountain pen, and Professor Evelyn Hayes's small, silver telescope. Each item was spotlit, enshrined like a sacred relic. But it was the next set of cases that truly turned their stomachs. Arranged with the meticulous precision of a museum exhibit were the stolen phones. Each device, carefully cleaned and charged, displayed the victim's last known photograph on its screen. The photos, often candid and joyful Sarah laughing with Emily, Michael surrounded by his students, David beaming in his rose garden were now frozen in time, digital ghosts in a glass prison. Below each phone, on a small, elegantly etched plaque, was the victim's name, their profession, and a brief, chilling summary of their intellectual contribution or unique characteristic. The archivist, Vance whispered, her voice barely audible, her face pale. This is it. His archive. As they moved deeper into the lab, the source of the faint hum became apparent. A series of large, cylindrical containment units, each glowing with an eerie, soft light, stood against the far wall. They were filled with a clear, viscous liquid, within which, suspended like specimens, were the perfectly preserved, naked bodies of the 6 victims. Their eyes were open, staring blankly ahead, their faces serene, almost peaceful. The monarch butterfly wings were not just a calling card. They were a symbol of the preservation, each wing carefully placed on the chest of its respective body, like a macabre emblem. Corbin felt a wave of nausea. He had seen countless dead bodies, but never anything like this. This wasn't just murder. It was an act of grotesque, artistic appropriation. Thorne wasn't just taking lives. He was attempting to immortalize them, to freeze them in a state of eternal, silent contemplation. He's using a form of plastination, a forensic expert, who had joined the raid, whispered in awe and horror. A highly advanced, customized version. He's replaced their bodily fluids with polymers. It allows for perfect preservation. A macabre masterpiece. Suddenly, a voice, calm and measured, sliced through the stunned silence. A masterpiece indeed. A collection of brilliance, frozen in its purest form, beyond the ravages of time and decay. Dr. Alistair Thorne stood in the doorway of a small, adjacent study, a placid smile on his face. He was a man of medium height, with thinning gray hair and piercing blue eyes that held an unnerving intensity. He was dressed in a pristine white lab coat, as if he had just stepped out of a highly specialized operating theater. In his hand, he held a delicate, silver-handled magnifying glass. "Dr. Thorne," Corbin said, his voice dangerously low, his hand instinctively going to his weapon. "You're under arrest." Thorne merely chuckled, a dry, intellectual sound. "Under arrest? For what, detective? For appreciating the beauty of human intellect? For preserving the very essence of Havenwood's spirit, which your institution was so carelessly allowing to fade?" Vance stepped forward, her voice controlled. "These are people, Dr. Thorne, not specimens. Not objects for your perverse collection." "Oh, but they are more than that now, Agent Vance," Thorne replied, his eyes gleaming with a manic zeal. "They are eternal. They are perfect. In life, their brilliance was fleeting, their contributions often overlooked. Here, in my archive, they are revered. They are truly understood. I have given them immortality, a purity that life could never offer." He gestured around the room with a sweeping hand. Sarah, the quiet knowledge of stories. Michael, the wisdom of history. David, the vision of creation. Maria, the burgeoning art of expression. Arthur, the meticulously compiled memory. Evelyn, the boundless quest for the stars. Each a crucial component of Havenwood's identity. I am merely the curator, the one who saw their true value and ensured their lasting legacy. Corbin took a step closer, his voice laced with disgust. "You murdered them, Thorne. You stripped them of their lives, their families, their futures." "Murder?" Thorne scoffed, a look of genuine disdain crossing his face. "Such a crude, barbaric term. I offered them an ascent, a transformation. The monarch butterfly, you see, symbolizes just that. Metamorphosis. From the ephemeral caterpillar to the eternal winged spirit. I have simply facilitated their ultimate evolution." He held up a small, exquisitely framed monarch butterfly, its wings shimmering under the light. "I collected these from their natural habitat, each one perfect, a symbol of the beauty of their final state. A silent, elegant tribute." The sheer arrogance, the delusional conviction in his voice, was sickening. Thorn truly believed he was a benefactor, not a killer. He saw himself as a visionary, a guardian of intellectual purity. How did you do it? Vance pressed, needing to understand the method of such a silent, bloodless acquisition. Thorn smiled, a chillingly pleasant expression. Ah, my little secret, the silent siren. A highly potent, fast-acting neurotoxin, tasteless, odorless. A single, almost imperceptible prick. They never felt a thing. Quick, painless transition. Then, the meticulous work of preservation begins. Takes time, precision, art. But the results, as you can see, are exquisite. He gestured proudly towards the containment units. Corbin knew there was no reasoning with him. This man was beyond the reach of conventional logic. He was lost in his own twisted world of intellectual superiority and morbid curation. Dr. Thorn, you're coming with us? Corbin stated, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Thorn's placid expression finally faltered, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. Such a pity. I was just about to add my 7th volume. The Voice of Dissent. The Critical Lens. A particularly valuable piece for any comprehensive archive. Wouldn't you agree? He looked directly at Vance, a chilling implication in his gaze. The tactical team moved in, swiftly disarming Thorn and securing him. He offered no resistance, his eyes still fixed on his archive. A faint, almost wistful smile playing on his lips. You may take me, detective, he said, his voice still calm. But you cannot undo my work. The archive is complete. The essence of Havenwood, preserved forever. The subsequent days were a whirlwind of media frenzy and forensic investigations. The discovery of Thorn's archive sent shockwaves across the nation. The story of the archivist of Havenwood became a terrifying case study in psychological pathology, a testament to the depths of human depravity. The process of removing the victims' bodies from the grotesque preservation units, and the subsequent efforts to prepare them for proper burial, was a harrowing and deeply disturbing ordeal for everyone involved. For Havenwood, the revelation of Thorn's identity brought a complex mix of relief and profound sorrow. The immediate threat was gone, but the scars remained. The innocent trust that had once defined the town was shattered beyond repair. The college, slowly reopening its doors, carried a heavy burden of grief and a renewed sense of vigilance. Corbin watched Thorn being led away, his face expressionless. The case was closed, the monster captured, but the victory felt hollow. He looked at the faces of his team, the exhaustion etched on their features, the trauma lingering in their eyes. They had found the archivist, but they had also glimpsed a darkness that would forever haunt their memories. In the aftermath, the town tried to heal. Vigils were held, memorials erected. The monarch butterfly, once a symbol of beauty and transformation, now carried a chilling dual meaning for the people of Havenwood, a reminder of both nature's delicate artistry and a killer's macabre signature. Corbin stood by the Deschutes River, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The river flowed on, indifferent to the human tragedy that had unfolded on its banks. He thought of the victims of their lives and of the twisted legacy Thorn had tried to create. The archivist might be behind bars, but the whispers of his archive, the chilling echoes of stolen lives and appropriated knowledge, would forever linger in the quiet, once tranquil town of Havenwood. Its innocence was gone, replaced by a profound understanding that even in the most peaceful of places, the darkest corners of the human mind could unleash a terror beyond imagination. The story of Havenwood, like the archived lives, would now forever carry the indelible mark of the archivist.